Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto could manipulate shadows. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Hokage Monument, Hidden Caves. A blast of mist erupted from the newly opened jar and engulfed the room. They could hear a strange sound from somewhere within the mist, a high-pitched horo-ho-horo-horo-horo. Absalom and Hogback recognized it though. After all, they were the only people still alive that could identify Perona's unique laugh. They heard a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. So, you finally decided to let me go, you stupid old man? I can't believe you trusted me enough to do so, but let me just say you just made your last mistake. Then came the words that Absalom and Hogback hoped they would never hear directed at them, negative hollow. Ghosts appeared from nothingness and rammed through the occupants of the room who were too slow to dodge them, in other words everyone save Naruto. He managed to duck aside from the speeding apparition. He saw the others get nailed though. Yukino fell to her knees in tears muttering, I got off too lightly, I deserve the hate that everyone has always given me and much more than that. I don't deserve happiness, or love or care, much less Haruka-chan's. Haruka just fell over muttering, I deserve to die, if I am reincarnated I hope I am a worm. Who am I to act all high and mighty to everyone else when I myself am so cowardly and weak? Absalom fell to his knees saying, I apologize for walking on the same ground as everyone else. Hogback fell onto his back sobbing, why am I still alive? I should have died years ago. Who was I to prevent it? I wish I could go back in time and prevent myself from ever being born. Naruto watched this in shock, her abilities were fucking scary. He looked around in the dispersing mist for the woman turned ghost responsible, taking a scroll out of his coat at the same time. He called out, what old man are you talking about? No one here qualifies as old, except maybe Hogback and Absalom. This was the major reason he wanted those two to be here. If he was lucky, the sight of old acquaintances might make her more willing to talk. The voice returned and he could see a floating shadow at the other side of the room, as far away from the jar as possible. Hogback? Absalom? Those two died centuries ago. How do you know of them? He called out, they're still alive and well through Hogback's medical skill. They're right here in this room. The mist dispersed a little more, allowing him to see some detail of the spirit. The voice returned, oh my god, you're right. Hora 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 horo. Who would have guessed I would see you two again? I see the old man isn't here, so who are you, boy? The mist was almost gone and he could see some features, but the figure was still mostly cloaked. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I am the current employer of Absalom and Hogback. They work for me as they worked for Gecko Moria long ago. I want to offer you the same deal. Who is the old man you're talking about? The mist still shrouded the figure, you know who I mean. The old man with all those scars and the long beard tied with purple ribbons. He managed to distract me while those other men put me in that horrid jar. Speaking of which, Mini Hollow. A very small ghost soared from the figure, and when it neared the jar he heard her snap her fingers just before the ghost exploded and annihilated the piece of ceramic along with a good chunk of the wall. The voice continued on, now, where is the old man? And most importantly, why should I work for you? I have enjoyed being free, and I have no intention of returning to servitude. Moria promised me my own country to get me to work for him, so what do you offer? The mist cleared completely and he finally managed to get a decent view of her. She was lying horizontally in midair with her head resting in her right hand. She had a tall, thin figure, and she was probably around 5 feet 10 inches. Her hair was a light pink and was tied in two tails that would fall to her shoulder blades. She wore a white t-shirt with a winged skull and crossbones upon it, the flag of the long-sunk thriller bark. The shirt had long sleeves that came to her wrists. The shirt itself only reached her below her ribs, revealing her stomach. She wore a red mantle that fell around her shoulders that was secured by a large pink bow. She also wore a pink miniskirt with a belt whose buckle was a large pink heart and had black and white striped leggings that ran down her legs. Her feet were covered by knee-length red boots that were secured by several buckles. Upon her head was a black and red crown with a black cross adorning the top in the style of Old English rulers. Her eyes, however, were highly memorable. In fact, he could only think of one other person that had eyes like hers, and he was a strange boy by the name of Lee. Unlike that talentless guy though, they actually looked good on her. 1. Naruto continued on, in return for your service, I can give you what you lost. A smirk graced her features. Oh, and what might that be? I don't believe I have lost anything. Naruto went on, really? You don't want the ability to touch again? To smell? To taste? When you abandoned your body, Perona, you lost the ability to interact with physical objects. I am willing to give that back. Perona looked struck for a moment before her features turned to anger. Naruto saw, though, in her eyes, behind the anger, a bit of hope. What do you know about me, boy? Nothing. I don't know what you offered Hogback and Absalom to get them to work for you, but I am not taken so easily. How would you even give me such things back anyways? My body rotted long ago, the only thing left of it is the dust that my bones became. Who are you to talk down to me? She contained her anger, but Naruto knew that cause of that anger. Her anger was caused by the pain of Naruto reminding her of what she lost when she gave up her body. She was forced to remember that which she lost and dearly wanted back. She probably hadn't thought about such things in centuries. He opened old wounds, and she hated him for it. Her voice tapered off near the end, becoming airy, seductive, and extremely dangerous. This was his chance. If he made the wrong move, she would obliterate him, and he knew it. Naruto slowly unrolled the scroll and placed his hand upon the large symbol inscribed upon it. He just prayed that this worked. From the symbol came a puff of smoke, and when the smoke vanished, where there was once a scroll was now a human-sized object. This object was completely white, and though it held a human shape, it had no features. If you stiffened the limbs, it could have been a shop mannequin. Naruto looked at the ghost before him who asked, hope withering, and anger and pain rising, what is this? Naruto talked fast, it is a body that I have modified to be able to host any soul. If you possess this like you would when you once returned to your physical body, it will take on your features and clothing without a single flaw. It may not be your body, but it will be an exact copy of your body. This is your only chance to regain what you lost, to smell, to taste, to touch, to become human again. You won't even age, it will remain young forever. This in exchange for your service, I will even throw in revenge against the man who sealed you into the bargain. Do we have a deal? The ghost girl looked hesitant, she couldn't believe her change of fortune. As far as she was concerned, she was trapped in a very small space for who knows how long, then she is suddenly released and practically given what she has been looking for so long. She decided to take the risk and said, you have a deal, before she dived into the body. Naruto watched as his experiment did its work. The features shifted into those of its host as he just saw her, clothes and crown included. Before long he was looking at a black and white version of Perona before color filled the form. The eyes fluttered open. She felt the rock under her hand and a look of pure joy graced her features as he heard the moans of misery die off. The negativity was wearing off. He walked over and whispered into Perona's ear. You see? I won't betray you, ever. I have given you back what you lost, the ability to taste, to smell, to touch. He leaned down and kissed her on the cheek, and to be touched. You can trust me. He got up and left the now blushing girl behind as he explored the caves. He hadn't been in there in a while. The others eventually got over themselves. Perona's debilitating ghosts only lasted for a minute or two. Absalom and Hogback, however, saw what the girls didn't since they recovered first. They had felt it before, what Perona could do when she got pissed off, so they had a bit of tolerance, and they saw Naruto convince Perona to join them, and what he did afterward. Absalom sported a lecherous grin before he sang to himself, "Perona's got a boyfriend, Perona's got a boyfriend." This was the wrong thing to say, however, as he quickly rejoined the Exiwa ninja on the floor and crying, though they were beginning to pull themselves together. Hogback left the room to the girls and Absalom, smiling once the recovering Perona couldn't see him. He knew what Naruto was playing at. Inspiring loyalty by making a girl love you, very clever Naruto-sama. Perona has never had a boyfriend before, so she will be easy prey for someone with enough caring and good enough looks. Hogback was no fool, and he knew that every move the young man made was intentional. He might be too young for such a relationship now, but he is still good looking for his age and could probably win over the most icy of hearts given some time to grow. He would be quite handsome in his teens and early 20s if his previous encounters with children were correct. And something told the doctor that Perona would not be the first woman won over by such methods. He thought to himself as he walked into his lab: actor, shadow master, ninja, homeowner, recruiter, scientist, army commander, dictator, and now a seducer. What occupation shall you take next, Naruto-sama? Konoha main gate. It was finally time for Naruto to return to Hell on Earth, in other words, Konohagakure. To some it was the place of nightmares, to others the place of their dreams. 1 full year had passed since Naruto left the village under the pretenses of a training trip on his own. All the while he was supposed to be watched by Anbu, though what the Anbu were truly watching was his shadow given physical form and specific orders not to do anything suspicious. While he had spent the first few months recruiting members to his budding organization, each with a specific purpose in mind, he had never really planned much after finding Perona. He had never thought that he would find the 3 enigmas so quickly. That was all thanks to Yukino-chan and her unique abilities. As a result, he had spent the remaining months training in the caves of the Hogake Mountain and the last few months traveling in Rai no Kuni and Kaze no Kuni, killing the reasonably strong in order to provide Hogback with the most powerful people to transform into marionettes for general zombies, and obtaining shadows in order to animate the completed creations of the ancient doctor. The results of it all was that his growing army of undead had grown from around 50 soldier-class zombies and 1 general-class zombie, along with Rei and Hilden, who were not meant for combat, to around 100 soldier-class zombies and 5 general-class zombies. He had also rented out some of his soldier-class zombies to people like Gadu for a large sum of money each month, going from poor orphan with a large building in his name to an orphan with an extremely large amount of money stored in various dummy accounts in several different banks. His creations were generally used rarely by those he rented them to, and they had the sense to not let anyone see them and live. They could not die and had the skills of powerful ninja, so they were powerful warriors. He had underestimated his creature's true abilities since he had forgotten that the zombie retained the abilities of the one whose shadow he possessed. As a result, his original 50, which had the shadows of Kot Anbu, mostly from the Nth division, had the tactics and jutsu of Ne Anbu. The newer ones had shadows of similar people, ninja, that he had encountered and subdued in various countries. The generals had the shadows of powerful A or B-class ninja that had stood out among their peers: Zaraki Kenpachi, Rokashu Aoi, Kurisuki Raiga, Fuma Kamakiri, and Fuma Jigimo. Those were the 5 whose shadows he had used to bring his strongest creations to life. 2 of them were members of the 7 swordsmen, one encountered in Kiri, 1 encountered on the road and captured after killing the boy who attempted to assist him. Rokashu Aoi, who had been made a jonin of Amigakure after defecting from Konoha, wielder of the Nidaime Hokage's Raijin sword, defeated and allowed to keep the sword that he had grown used to using now that he was no longer living. The last 2 were jonin of the once great Fuma clan, defeated together by himself and his allies. Their 3rd teammate, Fuma Kageru, would have joined them if she had not used a jutsu that ended up killing her in an attempt to save them. As a result, she joined the ranks of the zombies as a body, a marionette, rather than an animating shadow. The beautiful girl now served as Hogback's assistant and is the 3rd zombie not made for combat. Yes, his army had grown. Even more impressive were the bodies that had been constructed for them. Some of them were an amalgam of parts, specifically the 3 that had gone to Aoi and the Fuma clan members. The 2 that went to the shadows of the 7 swordsmen were much more powerful. The body that he had animated with the shadow of Kurisuki Raiga was in fact the body of the Nidaime Hokage that he had stolen and replaced. He did the same with the Shodaime Hokage, but he had not found a shadow for that body yet. The Yandame Hokage's body remained in the Hokage's tomb. He didn't want anything to do with the man, or his corpse. The genius of the placement of Raiga's shadow was in the fact that the Nidaime was a master of water techniques, and that carried on even in death. Combined with Raiga's mastery of lightning, the pairing of body and shadow was extremely potent in this case, more powerful than the Nidaime had been in his prime since, although he had to relearn his water abilities, his body had been strengthened beforehand by Hogback. By surgically making the body more powerful, more durable, and more resistant to damage, stronger and faster, he had enabled the new zombie to surpass the Nidaime's human limits. The immensely powerful Suiton Jutsu of the Nidaime Hokage combined with the immense Raiton abilities of Kurisuki Raiga, Kiri's Lightning Fang, and armed with Raiga's swords, it was an extremely powerful warrior, albeit with morbid tendencies and a love of funerals. The body that was animated by Zaraki Kenpachi, however, was as good a matchup. Hogback had not left Thriller Bark with nothing. When he fled the immense boat with Absalom and the unconscious Moria, he had taken several things, his lab equipment and the most powerful zombies that he could find and pack in. The soldier zombies weren't worth bothering with, but he had taken 2 of the more powerful zombies with them. Specifically the bodies of the samurai Ryuma, and the body of Perona's favorite zombie and the closest thing she had to a general zombie under her control, the teddy bear-looking creature which she called Bercy. The thing was actually a doll she had as a child, sized up and given immense strength and speed, it wasn't to be underestimated. That creature aside, the body of the samurai was more important. It had been badly damaged, but over time Hogback had made it useful again. It was quite simple. The thing was not the most powerful of the general zombies for nothing. He had even retrieved his original sword from the grave of Roronoa Zoro, the Black Blade Shusui, which was a blade of immense quality, surpassing most modern-day blades such as the Kusanagi or the Raijin. That was the body he had granted Zaraki Kenpachi. The insane mind and incredible style, jutsu and insanity of Zaraki Kenpachi, combined with the immensely powerful body of the legendary samurai Ryuma, and wielding the black sword Shusui, which was one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, sword in the world. It was definitely the most powerful sword in the elemental countries. All of that added up to an absolute badass rivaling the Raiga Nidaime combo. He had some great fun training with him, with all of the general zombies. However, all good things come to an end. In the last month, before his return, he had made accommodations for his group during his absence. Absalom lived in the mountains with Hogback, assisting him in the creation of the zombies with his insight into what tactical value certain things would have in a fight. Yukino and Haruka had to go into hiding since they were too vital to send wandering around. As a result, he had them join the 2 members of the 3 Enigmas in the mountain caves, and he had increased the rations in the caves to mirror the growing population. Perona, however, would be living with him in Konoha. She wouldn't be seen by anyone, he would make sure of that. Normally he wouldn't allow it, but she was quite possessive of him, always calling him Naruto-kun and always acting strangely when he was around. Quite frankly, he was afraid of being raped one day by the girl. She absolutely refused to stay in the caves, so he had to let her stay with him. When he told her that, she was absolutely overjoyed. In the last week before his return, he had gone to the cave where he was supposed to be all this time and had returned his shadow to its normal place. It had been training a lot in the last year, studiously reading the scrolls that he had obtained and training its body, even though its strength could not be increased through such methods. His shadow grew stronger as he grew stronger, not the other way around. He did, however, learn what it learned, and it had read about 100 pounds worth of books and scrolls on all things ninja. It was a lot like releasing about 10,000 Kage Bunshin at once. Normally this experience would blow his mind more effectively than a 50 caliber bullet at point-blank range, but thank God he had Kyubi. She could slow the intake of the memories so that he could absorb them at a survivable and comfortable rate, a little each day. He wouldn't absorb the entire thing for about 6 months, but that was better than becoming a vegetable or worse. He had spent the time before his return resting and meditating in the cave to help speed up the process. Now the day had come, his return to the days of pretending to be what he was not, an innocent careless boy with some amazing abilities. Mind you, he could act quite a bit colder than he had before. A year of training in solitude would naturally force one to grow more contemplative and wary, so he could drop the idiot persona around the old man and adopt a more mature one instead, no longer rushing through things with reckless abandon when the goat was around, and slowly let the methodical genius peek through. Not the evil though, no, that would be well hidden, but he no longer had to play the fool. Now he could play the much more enjoyable role of the detached, serious, and skilled. He wouldn't be an emo by any means. He did have a sense of humor, albeit twisted. He could be enjoyable to be around, but you wouldn't hear him screaming something like "Databeo" in this lifetime. When he passed through the gates, the gatekeepers looked at him with scorn. Not that he cared. He just flashed the letter the Sandaime had given him to allow him back into the village on this specific day, and went to the library to return copies of the books and scrolls that he had borrowed. The real manuscripts he was keeping in the caves. The ones he stole from the ninja-only libraries were in the caves as well. He made his way to the Hokage Tower, steadying himself to not kill the old goat when he saw that smiling face that he wanted nothing more than to beat to a no longer living pulp. It wouldn't do well to break cover now. The hidden knife kills the foe, not the one they saw coming. When he made his way to the Hokage Tower, he got plenty of mutters from the assembled crowd. "Damn, I thought he was dead, why did he have to come back? Can't he tell he isn't wanted?" And other such things were heard if you listened hard enough. Only one guy had the balls to come forward and yell, "Why the hell did you have to come back, you hellspawn?" Naruto just continued onward, giving him the bird and saying, "Love you too, but I love your daughter even more." As he continued into the building, the man in question would be irritable and humiliated for the rest of the day, as his daughter, well, she wasn't what you would call a pure virgin. He got more or less the same treatment from the people inside the building, including the secretary, who attempted to bar his access to the Hogake's office. He just tossed the letter saying that he should come straight to the old man's office when he returned on the woman's desk, and pushed past her without giving her a second glance. He knocked once on the door and continued in when he heard the aged ninja say in a voice that sounded like he was bored to tears, "Enter." Naruto entered the decent-sized office and saw the Sandaime at his desk furiously combating a tower of paperwork as high as he was tall sitting on his desk. A more caring or empathetic person would have told the old man the possible benefits of Kage Bunshin in such a situation, but he just really couldn't be bothered. He watched the man fight the flat white menace that threatened all things useful and efficient. Eventually the man noticed that it was Naruto in his office instead of the usual Chunin there to assist his hated enemy, and immediately rose to greet the boy. "Naruto-kun. How have you been, my boy? I was expecting you to be here a little earlier." Naruto just looked at him and let a small, if fake, smile grace his lips before saying, "I'm great, Aji-san. I've gotten a lot stronger than I was when I left. I have also gained a lot of control over my abilities, and a lot of insight into how the world works. I've never felt better." Old Sarutobi sat down again and smiled at the boy. He was a bit colder than he expected, but the innocence that the boy once brimmed with could not truly coexist with experience. It was one or the other. He sounded a lot more confident, and he had grown a bit too, and not just in body. Unsurprising, since he was now 9 years old, and had been fending for himself for quite a while. The academy started the year yesterday, and Naruto was finally old enough to enroll, albeit a little late. He would have started last year, at 8, but he wanted to leave for that trip, and the Sandaime, seeing how the teachers would probably treat him, had to agree that training on his own would be best. Now he knew how to train himself, and any corrupt teachers wouldn't be able to sabotage the delicate early education that, if denied him, would probably ruin his career before it really began. He would be a little older than his peers, but that was okay. He told the boy, "I am glad that you are okay, Naruto. I worried a bit about what kind of things you might find out there, but my worries had no basis, it seems." Naruto just nodded, and he continued on, "So, the academy started up yesterday, so you will have a little catching up to do under normal circumstances, but I think you learned more than what they already know during the last year. You might even teach them a few things, Naruto-kun. Here, take this and give it to the woman at the academy's front desk tomorrow at 8 a.m., when classes start. Make me proud, my boy." Naruto took the paper that the aged ninja offered him and smiled, saying, "I will, Aji-san," before leaving the room. He looked at the paper that he was given. I had the address of the academy on it and the notice that he was to join a specific class, nothing special. He got out of the tower, inwardly gagging from the tone and the smile he had used in that accursed old man's presence. The Sandaime smiled as the boy left. He would make a good ninja, and maybe, one day, a fine successor to his father. In the meantime, he had this monstrosity to face. He sat down and took up a pen and the topmost file of the pile of paperwork that had grown a few inches while he wasn't looking. He put pen to paper before blaring at the large stack and said, "Bring it on, motherfucker, round 2. Naruto's home aka Demon House aka Lair of the Beast and all sorts of other good names given by the kind populace of Konoha, those loving souls. Naruto finally got to his house and found it in much better condition than he had left it. The rotting wood was no more, the broken windows were replaced, the lawn was trimmed, and the place looked livable. The only thing that turned it away from the populace was the fact that he lived there and the incinerating barrier around the fence. When he got to the front gate, he found a large pile of ash in front of it, most likely the remains of at least 3 people who had walked into the field of deadly energy. "Dumb bastards," Naruto muttered to himself as he dispelled the barrier in front of the gate and stepped through, blowing the ash away with a small futon jutsu. He walked up to the door and walked in, closing the door behind him and looked around. The place was in pristine condition. The portraits were newly polished and the place was in better shape than it had been in decades. Naruto looked through several rooms, empty but well cleaned. His own room was creepy as ever, no windows, large king-size bed, pictures of horrible atrocities, same as he left it. The only question was where the hell all the zombies were. No one ever came to his house unless they were the Sandaime, or they were there to kill him. As a result, they usually roamed the halls, looking to sate their boredom, but he hadn't seen hide or hair of the undead since he got there, except the portrait zombies, they were still there. He descended to the basement, looking for his creations, and he inevitably found them. They were all in the basement, hopelessly drunk. Even if they were undead, they could still get absolutely sloshed apparently. He noticed that Hilden had a bottle of red wine almost as big as he was strapped to his back. Something told him he would see that bottle of wine a lot more often. Rei was sleeping in her lingerie near the back, and they were all passed out. Oh well, he thought, at least they didn't make a mess. Naruto examined his basement freezers and laboratories. They were all in spotless condition. He decided that he would send some of the bodies to Hogback later. He was running out of them since it took several human corpses to create one soldier zombie, and dozens more to create a general zombie, unless the base was of great power, such as the Nidaimes or the Shodaimes were. Naruto stepped into a nearby shadow and entered the caves via a Kage Hoku. When he returned a minute later, he had Perona and the recently resurrected Bercy with him. Perona loved the thing, and he could kind of understand that. A 6-foot-tall awkward-looking teddy bear with an immense hat, a doctor's mask, eyes out of The Simpsons, and devil's horns, completely lovable. She was currently hanging onto Naruto's left arm. You can let go now, Perona-chan." She rubbed against his arm and said, "Oh, but I don't want to, Naruto-kun is so warm, I could stay here all day." "Oh geez." He put a hand on Perona's chin and lifted her head up to meet his eyes and said to her, Now Perona-chan, we can't pick out your room if you're clinging to me like this, besides I kind of like circulation in that arm." She sighed dramatically and reluctantly let go. "Okay Naruto-kun, you win this time. Let's go pick out my room then, shall we?" He nodded and she went upstairs, looking around, and the silent Bercy following her. She apparently really liked the portraits. Perona was a rather strange person in Naruto's opinion. She was one of the more dangerous people alive in a fight given time to get going, yet can be incredibly childish. She had been alive for centuries and was obsessed by things that were, in her opinion, cute. She acted exactly like she did way back during the Age of Pirates, when she assisted in the running of Thriller Bark, despite centuries having passed since then. She was also very strict with those placed under her and a harsh disciplinarian to the same. She would have been a good sensei for that one jonin, Hatake Kakashi. She wouldn't have let him be late, ever. However, despite her looks, she had never had a boyfriend before, or a significant other. She lived alone for most of her life, especially once consuming one of the devil fruits and gaining her powers. Ever since then she lived alone until she was 11 when she met Moria and helped establish Thriller Bark. After their defeat at the hands of the Straw Hat Pirates, she lived as a spirit. As a result, she had very little experience in such a relationship, although it was not a relationship. She basically relied on him for emotional comfort, and was very clingy, never letting him be alone with another woman if she could prevent it. He had no doubt that this would eventually grow into something more physical once he had aged sufficiently, but he couldn't complain. Her body would never age from its current beauty and perfection, and her abilities were terrifying since her ghosts made anyone a living target, could decimate rock and buildings, and she could see, hear, and communicate using them. She was a scout and a demolitionist all in one. He would live for a very long time, and he didn't mind her being at his side. She wouldn't be the only one, and she knew it. When she found out, she confronted him on it, and her exact words were, "I don't care if you're somebody else's too, but you are still my Naruto-kun." She was a real paradox, childish at one moment, mature and serious the next. She was willing to share him with others, but more than willing to make it hard as hell for any woman to get that close. It was a strange thing. Regardless of his current affairs regarding women, he had work to do. He went up to his room and prepared a few things. He had the academy in the morning. The next morning, Naruto awoke in his king-sized bed under the black quilt on blood-red silk sheets. The reason was his own biological clock waking him at exactly 8 a.m. There was, however, a strange lump under the bedspread. "Don't tell me," he thought as he looked under the covers and saw none other than the ghost princess grabbing him around the midsection, sound asleep and wearing nothing more than a pink silk nightgown. This was actually the first time he had seen her without her crown, which was odd since she had slept with it before. It couldn't have been far. He looked up and saw it there on the bedside table next to his top hat. He tried to break away from her vice grip, but she just held on tighter. "I'm going to have to get used to this, aren't I?" he thought, and as thought she could read his thoughts, Perona's head nodded once despite being totally out of it. He sighed and got to work on extricating himself from the bear hug. 30 minutes later, the Ninja Academy. Naruto was walking down the hall to his class. He had managed to somehow escape Perona's grasp, despite her warmth and lack of clothing under her nightgown. After that he had shunshined to the academy, and after giving the note to the Kyuubi-hating bitch of a secretary, he had gone to the room she directed him to. He idly thought, "My emo senses are tingling," as he neared the appropriate door. He entered the room and saw the rather rotund man teaching the class. The man saw him and said, "Ah, this must be the new student I told you all about. Come in and introduce yourself." Naruto stepped in front of the room and said, "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I would say that it was nice to meet you all and it will be pleasant learning with you, but it would be a horrific lie." About 3/4 of the class erupted into laughter. Naruto focused on those who didn't. They were the ones who would be making it to Genin more likely than not. There were a few, but 3 in particular stood out. One of them was a girl with her hair in 2 buns, the second was a strange-looking boy with large eyebrows and eyes that were a male version of Perona's, and the third was a long-haired Hyuga in the back that reeked of angst, arrogance, and other things that would likely be beaten out of him eventually, with any luck. The man who was teaching the class stopped chuckling and said, "Very funny, Uzumaki-san. Just sit wherever you want. I am Funino Daikoku, by the way, Daikoku-sensei to you." Naruto nodded and took a seat near the back, yet away from the rest, and rested his head on one hand. This was going to be a boring 3 years, good thing he brought plenty of chocolate. Ninja Academy, class, insert random number here, 8:30 a.m. Naruto sat in the same spot that he had sat for the last 3 years or so, near the back of the class, idly trying to pay attention to the boring as hell lecture as he drank a cup of Earl Grey, no cream, and 5 tablespoons of sugar. After the first year and a half of the teacher asking him random questions and him getting them exactly right every time, the teacher eventually stopped commenting on him and let him be. Needless to say, the class was amazed. There were a whole bunch of them who never even heard of advanced ceiling theory, but when the teacher asked him about it and he gave a perfect answer, they started to realize that there was something odd about it all. 3 years had passed since the day Naruto returned, and he was always bored as hell. He knew more about the way of the shinobi than this Chunin did, and yet he was stuck here listening to him babble for 6 to 7 hours a day. He understood the need to keep his cover, but this was getting beyond tedious for him. Thank God it was almost over. The Genin exams were today, and after that he might learn something from his Jonin sensei, with any luck. Naruto had changed in the last 3 years. He had grown a bit taller, now standing at 5 feet 4 inches tall. With his growth, his sweet tooth had grown with him, and he gorged more and more on various sweets each day, yet never gained an ounce due to constant exercise. If he ever gained a bit, he burned it away with a bit of demonic chakra. He had access to most of Kyuubi's chakra now. His transformation from man to half-demon was almost complete. His whisker marks had deepened, giving him a feral look, and his teeth had grown into fangs that poked below his lip if he smiled, which was rare. He could also call upon 6 taels worth of Kyuubi's chakra if he wanted, though controlling it was something else entirely. He could keep his mind and use at most 1 tael worth of the chakra, beyond that he couldn't control it at all, and Kyuubi told him that he never would. His control was as good as it was going to get. 1 tael of demonic chakra he could use, but beyond that it would damage him badly and he would go wild. Going wild wasn't unheard of, even for demons. Demonic chakra constantly hurt anything it came in contact with, even demons, and though they housed a lot of it, they couldn't really control their own energies. Hell, the reason that the Ichibi went insane was because he drew upon more chakra than he could control. Same went for the Sanbai. He lost his mind because he tried to use too much power at once and lost control. When Kyuubi was free, she had to keep her power under strict control at all times. It was the main reason why she slept so much back then, because she couldn't stay aware of her surroundings and keep her power under control at the same time for very long, a year or so at most. Naruto couldn't use much of Kyuubi's chakra and keep his mind, so he decided never to use the stuff in battle unless he absolutely had to. People found it surprising that although the blonde had never got anything lower than top marks in anything physical, and never lost a single spar, he was in the middle of the class. He always seemed to do horribly or average on tests and bookwork. Nobody could understand it. They didn't know it, but this was because Naruto wanted it that way. He could have aced all of those tests and exams, but he didn't really want to. If he did, then he would become the Rookie of the Year, and when the Genin teams were chosen, he would end up with someone from the middle of the class and the dobe, the dead last. This was something he didn't want. He wanted to at least have a competent team for the duration of his Genin days. He was more than willing to wait anywhere up to 50 years to destroy Konoha. He didn't mind waiting that long if that was how long all of his preparations for this initial goal took, but that didn't mean he had to be stuck with an idiot and someone barely useful during that wait. So, he decided to take the middle spot on the top team. The thought of becoming the dobe on purpose was out of the question, but being in the middle was pretty good. As a result, he had researched the past teams to evaluate exactly where that middle position most likely was. When he found the exact spot he would have to be in to be on the team with the Rookie of the Year and the dobe, he carefully sculpted his performance so that he would be in that particular spot. It was obvious to everyone that he could have aced all of the exams so far and take the top spot, but the reason why nobody knew for sure, everyone just attributed it to the fact that his laziness could rival any Nara's with ease. Naturally, he had made some enemies over the years. Mostly people whose parents told them to stay away from him and make his life hell, that he had hung up from a tall pole by their underwear or put Madagascar hissing cockroaches in their lunchbox, every day for several years. There were also the people whose personality simply clashed with his. Among these were that strange boy Lee, whose work-hard personality was his direct antithesis, and Hyuga Niji, whose arrogance and foolish pride caused him to begin to dislike him after he effortlessly beat him without even moving from his spot in the ring. They never said anything, but Niji was always especially cold to him, and Lee just got more determined to defeat him one day. Naruto actually encouraged this. If Lee trained his body well, he would make an excellent marionette someday. He mostly acted cold, did his work somewhat well, aced everything that had any sort of practical test, never lost a single spar even to the Chunin examiners, and pissed off people who in his opinion deserved it, especially that Niji guy. He had the equivalent of the Sandaime's adamantine staff rammed up his ass. He knew why he was like that though, and he couldn't blame him. He knew of the incident between the Kyumo ambassador and Hyuga Hinata, the heiress of the clan, and the outcome that was the death of Niji's father. He couldn't blame him for hating an innocent girl. Hell, it almost made him feel a bit guilty for convincing that Kyumo shinobi to kidnap her in the first place, almost but not quite. The possibility of obtaining a Hyuga as one of his marionettes was too great, but that bastard clan head Hayashi got to the kidnapper before he did. Oh well, lost opportunity, but he did almost start a war and made hell for the Sandaime along with scarring several people for life. Theses gains made it worth the effort in the end. Right now was the day of the Genin exams, the final hurdle for them to become Genin. Well, Genin initiates, but Genin is still in the title, damn it. The written portion was already done with. Naruto knew all of the questions and answered the number he needed to guarantee his final placement. He had already calculated his score and it was perfect for his purposes. Now all he had to do was get 100% on the practical exams and he would be put on the team with the Rookie of the Year and the Dobe. One supposed genius, one idiot who needs a lot of work with an excellent Jonin sensei. It was the best outcome of the exams. The proctor for the exam, a new guy called Iruka, brought everyone out to the academy's training ground for the Taijitsu exam, to the sparring ring to be specific. It would normally be Daikoku who would proctor the exam, but he retired from the academy, returning to service as an active shinobi again. Okay everybody, the pineapple-haired sensei called. Your Taijitsu exam is to see how long you can stay in the arena with my assistant Mizuki. If you can last longer than 2 minutes, you will get top marks. If you can't even last 45 seconds, you will fail. You can only use taijutsu, no genjutsu ninjutsu, or weapons are allowed at all. Understand? There was a chorus of, yes, Iruka-sensei from everyone other than Naruto, and he started reading off names of people who, when called, would go into the ring and face the white-haired Chunin. Naruto watched as various people walked into the arena and did their best to fend off the more experienced ninja. He held back since these were children, but he still had to make this as hard as possible, so he was going at about 40% of his maximum speed and strength for the exam. Naruto noticed that he was wearing weights specifically for the occasion. Naruto paid attention to the Chunin's pattern. He would go very light, guarding and throwing some punches and kicks with the occasional grapple to attempt to get the student out of the ring for the first 30 seconds, but after that he started to really try to win, doing his best in his weighted condition. Most students got knocked out of the ring or were knocked out at about 35 to 40 seconds. There were not many that succeeded, making it to 45 seconds. Then that girl with the bun-style hair, Tenten he recalled her name was called. She walked into the ring and took a stance. Mizuki stayed in place, waiting for her to come to him after Iruka called to begin. She stayed still and forced Mizuki to come after her at 15 seconds. He tossed a quick punch to the jaw, which was avoided, and sent a kick to the older man's knee, which he avoided, only to send a blow into her stomach at 31 seconds. She gasped loudly. The wind knocked out of her, and Mizuki finished the match by grabbing her shoulders and tossing her roughly out of the ring. Iruka stopped the timer and yelled out 46 seconds before scribbling something down onto a clipboard. The girl was seen to buy a medical ninja that was there for any injuries during the exam. The exam went on with similar lackluster performances until another was called up by the name of Rock Lee. The boy stepped into the ring and took the Academy Taijutsu stance. Naruto knew that the boy was the dead last. He didn't have any talent in anything. He couldn't perform any sort of ninjutsu or genjutsu, so he would have to be spot on perfect in the Taijitsu exam and the weapons proficiency exam to have a chance. He had some book smarts, and that was keeping him alive in the academy right now. Mizuki dashed forward and engaged in the first 30 seconds of mock battle, throwing punches and kicks, which were avoided, and dodging most of the return strikes, though one or two got through his guard. At 31 seconds, Mizuki started laying on the pressure, throwing his strikes faster and harder, doing more painful combos that, although most were blocked or avoided, they still took their toll on the boy. Lee managed to avoid any bad situations and was doing quite well, avoiding the worst of the assault and hanging in there longer than anyone else had thus far. Eventually it was all for naught though, as at 1 minute and 20 seconds Mizuki stepped back and removed his weights, becoming faster once more, and Lee was knocked out of the ring from a powerful blow at 1 minute and 39 seconds, doing better than anyone else at the exam. There were only 2 students left, himself and Niji. Niji was called into the arena and he stood before Mizuki, who was putting the weights back on. Since Iruka didn't have any look of surprise or shock on his face at what Mizuki had done, Naruto guessed that Mizuki was probably allowed to take off the weights or required to at a certain time. Most likely during the last 15 to 20 seconds the Chunin would be giving the battle his all. Niji slipped into the familiar Hyuga Taijitsu stance, the Juken, the gentle fist, as Mizuki removed his weights upon seeing who his opponent was. Young or not, a user of the Juken was not to be taken lightly. Niji charged toward the Chunin, Byakugan activated and targeted the Tenketsu in his arms, looking to take him down rather than outlast him. Mizuki must have realized what the young Hyuga was trying to do, because he did his best to avoid the chakra-powered strikes, returning with a jab to the ribs which was avoided by the Juken's fluid movement. Niji dominated his opponent. He was very strong for a person his age and managed to keep Mizuki on the defensive until 1 minute and 5 seconds had passed and Mizuki stopped screwing around. Mizuki started flooding his fists and feet with chakra to give them extra power and attempted to disarm the young boy. Niji, with his fluid style, managed to avoid the powerful blows until 1 minute and 35 seconds had passed, when the Chunin pulled out all the stops and landed a hard punch to the abdomen. Niji's eyes went wide and blank at the strike and he was pushed back several feet by the force of the blow. When he stopped moving, he clutched his stomach, dry heaved for a moment or two before falling to his knees and collapsed, out cold. Niji clocked in at 1 minute and 41 seconds and was treated by the medical ninja. He was back on his feet within 2 minutes, but he had some bad bruises on his stomach and the doctor told him not to eat too much for the next few hours. Now the time had come and Naruto stood before the examiner. Mizuki didn't put his weights on for the fight. He was taking him as serious as he did Niji, which was probably a smart move. Iruka started the clock and Naruto didn't waste any time, rushing the older ninja with frightening speed. Mizuki was caught off guard at the speed and Naruto grabbed the Chunin's shoulders and sent a kick towards his left knee, landing it at an oblique angle to the kneecap. It came disjointed with a sickening pop and Mizuki howled in pain. Naruto forced the man to one knee, not the injured one, and quickly hooked one hand under the man's ribcage and grabbed the lowest protrusion of bone, yanking it out of place with a nasty crunch, and when he did Mizuki's world went white with the pain before he blacked out. He let the man drop to the ground and he said, "How long did it take me, Iruka-sensei?" Iruka stopped the clock out of muscle memory as everyone looked on in a combination of awe and horror. One of the more squeamish girls emptied her stomach in the nearby bushes. Iruka stammered out, "Naruto defeated Mizuki in 14 seconds. And marked down something on the clipboard." Naruto was fairly proud of himself. Iruka said, "Okay class, now that the taijutsu portion of the exam is complete, we move on to the weapons proficiency exam. If you will follow me, we have preparations already set up." He led them to the next part of the exam while the medial ninja tended to Mizuki's injuries. Iruka led them to a part of the training ground near the forest. There was a large array of weapons on a nearby table, and a large amount of targets in the trees. The targets varied in size and distance, and each had small numbers inscribed on it in various parts. The closer to the center, the farther away the target, and the smaller the target, the larger the number was. The largest number was 1000 and it was at the farthest target, dead center, and the target itself was about half as large as a tea saucer. The scarred Chunin smiled and said, "You each get 10 kunai and 10 shuriken, and do your best to rack up points. The highest score you can get for each test is 10,000 and the two numbers combined will determine your score. The maximum combined is 20,000, but a 5,500 combined is enough to pass, barely. Okay, first up is..." It went on like that for a while. It was the same thing, a student would throw a weapon, and it would miss entirely or hit a target. If it hit, a Chunin in the woods already would go over and pull it out, and tell Iruka the number before repairing the ceramic targets with a Doton Jutsu. The usual combined score was between 2200 and 12,000. The highest score thus far was achieved by Hyuga Niji, who had achieved the 12,000 combined score. This was followed by Lee, who marked in at 10,400 combined. Now that 1010 girl from before was going up. She took a kunai from the table and after a moment of consideration threw it as hard as she could. It hit the target without a sound. The chunin pulled out the knife and yelled out, 800. The class was impressed. That was the highest score thus far with a single target. No one had hit higher than 650 before then. It went on similar to that for both the kunai and shuriken tests. Her eventual combined score was 17,900. She missed only once and that knife hit about an inch away from that 1,000-point target. Now it was Naruto's turn. He popped a peppermint into his mouth before taking up one of the knives. He was fighting the urge to smile, he really was. He had been doing stuff like this for years, this test would be easy. He waited until the wind was right, and the angle was absolutely perfect before throwing the knife with deadly accuracy. It landed with a loud crack in the middle of the 1,000-point mark. The chunin who yanked out the knife verified it by pulling out the knife and yelling, 1,000, and the class and the proctor were amazed. No one had hit that target before now, in the history of the course. The Sannin didn't even manage it, well not when they took the Genin exams, they could do it now of course, easily, but no one at that age had hit it. Regardless, everyone decided to call it a fluke, though no one said anything save the Niji fangirls who yelled it quite loudly. You could never compare to Niji-kun. Naruto took up the next knife and did the same thing again, and again, and again. The total score for the kunai test was 10,000, the maximum score, and a new academy record. Naruto did the exact same with the shuriken test, to achieve a record-breaking score of a perfect 20,000 points. The highest score up until now was set by Orochimaru at 18,700. An arrogant bastard would smirk, so Naruto didn't, but he didn't know what the big deal was, of course he was going to hit the targets. Each and every throw was perfectly timed, precisely calibrated to fly an exact distance at an exact speed. Once you did that, the only trick was learning how to do the same thing 10 times since it required an entirely new calibration for shuriken due to the fact that they spun in the air. It was simple mathematics as far as he was concerned. Regardless of his understanding, or lack thereof, of his classmates' amazement, they moved on to the third part of the practical exams, the Ginjutsu Test. They were to put a chunin by the name of Izumo under a genjutsu and he would do his best to break it. The longer it took him to break the illusion, the higher your score for genjutsu casting was. The highest score was 1 minute, a passing score was 15 seconds. So it went on like the other tests thus far. Iruka would call out names, children would go up and cast their illusions. Usually the chunin would break it in around 9 to 10 seconds. There were a few exceptions though, such as Niji, whose illusion took the man 23 seconds to break, and Rock Lee, whose illusion was literally non-existent since he could not cast genjutsu. When Naruto went up, he didn't screw around, he went through 5 quick hand seals and muttered, Kokwanjiu no Jutsu. Izumo looked around a lot, unsure of what was happening, and desperately trying to break the powerful illusion. When the time exceeded 1 minute, Naruto let the poor man go. Top marks were his once more when it came to all things practical. The second part of the Ginjutsu exam was the Genjutsu breaking portion. As though in an act of revenge, the same chunin that they were casting illusions at got to return the favor, one by one, and they were to escape. A passing time was under 1 minute, top marks went to someone who broke free in less than 5 seconds. Lee was actually very good at breaking genjutsu, just not casting them. It took the bushy-browed boy 35 seconds to get free, it took Niji 15, and 10 49 seconds. Many were put over the 1 minute mark, though a good deal got loose at around 45 to 55 seconds. When Naruto got put under the illusion, he just pulsed his chakra to shatter the illusion of being naked that was put over him. He got his time down at 2 seconds. He was doing the best in the class hands down. Last but not least came the ninjutsu exam. They had to show the 3 academy jutsu and a jutsu of their choice. There was some system based on how many clones were created from the Bunshin no Jutsu, and how fast the 3 jutsu were performed along with the power of the optional jutsu that determined their score. Most students did rather well, showing off the academy jutsu easily enough for the most part, and showing off jutsu of D and C rank with difficulty. Hell, one person even used AB rank jutsu, but that was just Niji. Lee was left with nothing but a big fat 0 for this portion of the exam. As each ninja completed the exam, they were evaluated over their entire written and physical exam, and if they passed, they were given a Hitai 8, if they failed they were given that "see you next year and good luck then" speech. Not a lot of people got their headbands that day, though some did, Niji, 10-10, and Lee included. There were only 8 who passed so far, simply not enough points overall. Alas, Naruto was the last to be called, and everyone still there watched, eager to see what he would do this time. When he was asked to do the Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto did so and created 20 absolutely useless clones. He had more powerful versions such as the Kage Bunshin, Mizu Bunshin, and Tsuchi Bunshin, but he didn't feel like showing off too much. When it came to Kawarimi, he replaced himself with Iruka's desk, surprising the scarred Chunin. As the larger or smaller the object, the harder to replace with it was, since larger objects were harder to move and smaller objects were harder to use the correct amount of chakra. Naruto moved it back for him though, and he was ordered to henge into Iruka, which he did with no flaws whatsoever. Now came the final test, the optional jutsu. He was to use a ninjutsu of his choice. The higher the rank the better it would score. Naruto knew that he would be too suspicious if he used any S-class jutsu, of which he only had a few, but he still wanted to beat Niji out of pure spite, so he decided to go with an A-class jutsu instead. He performed a single hand seal and muttered "Kage Bunshin," and a single solid clone joined the class. Iruka clapped and said, "Well done, Uzumaki-san." Naruto looked at him and said, "What are you talking about? I haven't even done my jutsu yet." He made the clone go into the far corner of the room before saying so that the entire room could hear Bunshin Daibakuha. The clone exploded, nothing more to say. The chakra creation left as a parting memento, a new door into the hallway specially made for Akimichi using their clan jutsu at the time. In other words, the wall between the room and the hall was missing about 3 feet of stone. Iruka looked on shocked, as did the entire class. They knew that he was good, but not that good. Naruto took the band of metal and cloth and said, "Now, you can clap, Iruka-san," before vanishing via Shunshin. The rest of the class, well, those that graduated, which weren't many, they were told to show up tomorrow at 8 a.m. to hear the Genin teams, and then they were dismissed. Some went home to their parents, proud and happy. Most however went home with nothing but shame. The sons and daughters of many councilmen failed that day, and although anyone in the system would deny that the two events had any connection, the next year the Genin exam's difficulty went down drastically. Naruto's home, 4 p.m. Naruto returned home, new headband stashed inside his trench coat. He really liked the place. At first it was a horrifying shithole of an apartment. Now it was the home of ghosts, the undead, and a soon-to-be half-demon. A marked improvement as far as he was concerned. He had heard a lot of stories about the place, such as the demon tortured humans and kept frozen corpses in his basement. The undead stalked the halls and that it was plagued by spirits called forth by the Kyubi to terrify his enemies. Honestly, when he first heard the stories he searched for a security breach somewhere, a spy or something, but it turned out to be nothing but propaganda, eerily accurate propaganda, but propaganda nonetheless, and also there was no proof behind it. When he walked in the door and closed it behind him, he was immediately glomped from behind by Perona, who was hiding near the entrance where he couldn't see her. He wasn't surprised though, she had done this about every day for about 2.5 years. It wasn't made easier by the fact that she wasn't much taller than him at 5'7", and could latch onto him more effectively than a starving tick. "So how were the exams, Naruto-kun?" she cooed into his ear. Difficult but not impossible. I crippled some chunin for quite some time, and got perfect marks on the practical exams, a first in the history of the exam mind you. Though it won't be unrivaled for long. Judging by how many children whose parents have powerful friends or are powerful councilmen that are going to be doing this again next year, odds are the difficulty will be reduced to the levels of stupidly easy. They will probably add in a more difficult Jonin test as a result of it. I can't believe how badly that old goat is running this village. If he showed some backbone, he could just kill off his competition, but no, he decides to be nice and let idiots like Danzu walk all over him. Mark my words, Perona-chan, at the rate he's going, the council will have more power than the Hokage someday, and the office will be nothing more than a figurehead. It was true, the village council and the Hokage had been vying for power in the village for some time now. They couldn't overrule the man, he was still the Hokage, but they were a poisonous thorn in his side that was sucking away at his control in the village. If he didn't take control now, odds are that when he died, the council would delay selecting a Godayame long enough to guarantee that whoever got the job would be nothing but either a puppet or a figurehead. The Shodayame, Nidayame, and Yondame never let such things happen, but the Sandaime was foolish enough to give them the power they had now by not being more assertive when it came to Koharu, Hamura, and Danzu. He could stop it if he wanted to, but he was too stupid and naive to see what was going to happen if this continued on, and too cowardly of the people's reaction should he disband them. Naruto had managed to make his way to the living room, where after finally managing to dislodge Perona, he sat down. Perona immediately sat down next to him. "So Naruto-kun, who do you think will be put on your team tomorrow?" Naruto inhaled deeply and said after a moment, "Judging from the grades over the last 3 years and the exam scores of those who passed, I am guaranteed to be placed with the Rookie of the Year and the Dobe, the dead last of the class. More than likely my teammates will be Hyuga Niji and Rock Lee. Niji has held the top spot for 3 years because I let him, and with Lee's barely passing score in the exam, he is almost guaranteed to be the Dobe this year. Mind you, I am not out of the woods yet with the tests since there is still the Jonin's examination. I'm not too worried though, it's usually extremely easy if you know what you're doing. I'm more worried about next year's Genin exam. If my prediction about the difficulty decrease is correct, then the quality of ninja that this village will produce will go down in quality severely." Perona looked a bit puzzled. "I thought you hated this village and wanted to destroy it. Wouldn't a decrease in quality be a good thing?" Naruto smiled a bit. "Yes and no. It's a good thing because it makes annihilating the place easier. It's a bad thing because it makes the shadows and bodies to be gained from the village almost useless. You see?" Perona nodded, understanding the point in that. What more effective way to destroy your enemy than make them an ally? Well, slave, but the concept is mostly the same. She asked, "So, how long do you think it will be before we're finally ready to make our move?" Naruto thought for a moment, maybe a year, maybe a little longer. I had Absalom go on a body-catching campaign to help boost our numbers, and the number of marionettes Hogback is making is going up with the new material. What bothers me is the lack of general zombies. They will be the most important pieces on the board and we have very few of them. I have heard rumor though of a few people in Konoha who would be very useful to us. Such as people from the Hyuga clan, they would be excellent marionettes. People of the Nara clan would be good shadows to take, and I have even heard of a man capable of using the Shodayame Hokage's Mokutan Jutsu. If I can obtain his shadow, he would be an excellent match for the Shodayame's body, don't you think?" Perona nodded before saying, "What about that other one? You know that general zombie that you made before you met Hogback? Do you know who would be a good match for him?" Naruto chuckled at that. Perona knew that the thing she was talking about was meant to receive a very specific shadow, and she had been dying to find out whose it was. He had decided to tease her for around 3 years by not telling her yet, mentioning the zombie every now and then. Her reactions were very funny as long as you steered clear of the ghosts. He stood up and said, "Sorry Perona-chan, but you won't find out who it is until I find him. Now, if you'll excuse me, I will get Rei-chan to start dinner." He walked off toward the area that Rei was usually cleaning at this time of day, leaving a somewhat irritated girl behind him. While Naruto had changed a bit, she hadn't changed at all, physically or otherwise. The next morning, 7:30 a.m. Naruto woke up on the day of the team assignments to feel the telltale warmth and see the telltale bump of Perona wandering in there during the night and using him as a teddy bear. He lifted the sheets and there she was, clad in naught but a nightgown, arms around his torso, one leg wrapped around his, and her mid-cup breasts poking into his side. As much as he liked being there, he had somewhere to be, so he created a Kage bunshin and replaced himself with it before hurriedly getting into his normal garb and leaving via shunshin after grabbing his hat, hoping that he could get back into that position after the teams were decided. Ninja Academy, 8 a.m. Naruto walked in just before the bell rang, teacup in one hand, bagel in the other. Naruto had come up with a pretty good idea regarding his favorite beverage when he was insanely bored one day. He had filled a large vat that held about 20 gallons with Earl Grey tea, and with a combination of freezing units and flamethrowers had managed to keep it at a constant near boiling temperature. He had dumped about 50 pounds of sugar into the mix and had applied a complex seal to the whole contraption. He had affixed a matching seal the bottom of his favorite teacup so that by charging the seal with a modicum of chakra, it would act as a summoning jutsu, filling his cup with near boiling, sugar-filled tea. Now wherever he went he had a large supply of his favorite beverage on tap. Not bad for a few hours' work, if he did say so himself. Naruto sat down in his normal nonchalant fashion and ate his bagel in peace. There were 9 people there, and of them, 5 were nervous, 3 didn't talk much and 1 was obsessed with defeating Neji and Naruto. There wasn't much to talk about. That Iruka guy from the other day appeared in front of them and said, "Congratulations on passing the exam. Now then, I will simply read off the teams, few of them though there be. Team 1 is L. Loliot, Nate River, and Mihail Keel under Yagami Rado. Team 2 is Higurashi Kagome, Inakami Inuyasha, and Salome Tenten under Hatake Kakashi, and Team 3 is Hyuga Neji, Rock Lee, and Uzumaki Naruto under Mado Guy. Prove yourselves to be excellent shinobi and work hard. Let us hope that the next time we meet, that instead of being teacher and student, we will be colleagues." With that, he vanished. About 20 minutes later a brown-haired, mild-mannered man showed up and called for Team 1 and a white-haired boy, a boy with a nasty burn and a regular freak show, albeit an intelligent freak show, left with him. About 10 minutes after that a somewhat tall man appeared from nowhere on top of an enormous turtle and struck a pose. The man was wearing a green spandex bodysuit and had bowl-cut hair and eyebrows as thick as your arm. He yelled out in an insanely loud voice, "Team 3, I am your sensei, Mado Jai. Let us experience the power of youth together." Lee looked enraptured, Neji looked mortified, and Naruto just sat there thinking, "You have got to be fucking kidding me." Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.